Hello, it's Dave the Dead here. We are focusing today on the vintage collection and in particular Hasbro's commitment to finishing the 96. And what the 96 is, it's the original Kenner run from 1978 to 1985. So 96 figures were released between those years in the original trilogy. And Hasbro, they haven't made a promise, but they have acknowledged the community's desire to get some of these figures, or get all of the figures really, in the vintage collection. There's not too many to go, to be fair. Hasbro have actually knocked quite a lot out the park. And yeah, so we're just going to focus on what's left, focusing on Jabba's Palace and what figures are required. So taking out the Max Rebo band for now, because they're technically outside the 96, although it would be good to see them in a playset of sorts at some point. There's also characters like Barada, who Hasbro have never released, but I'll picture him here. We've had Kithaba, but it's not the same figure, not the same character. And there's also the Rancor Keeper. Let's put him in here as well. So we've had him in the Legacy collection, but not a vintage collection release. We'll focus on him another time, but today I'm going to focus on the Jabba's supervisor droid in the dungeon. It's EV-9D9, and let's discuss how we can get this guy into the vintage collection so we can all move on with our lives. Okay, stay tuned for more. Okay, so outside of the Max Rebo band and the Rancor who's in the background here, there are 4 characters that Hasbro has yet to put out in the vintage collection, pictured here from left to right. So we've got Amanaman, who came out in the Power of the Force line in 1985, regarded as one of the last 17. Hasbro did release him in the Power of the Force 2 line in the late 90s, and a really good figure, really good sculpt. Again, if he'd got a release back in Vintage Collection 1.0, I don't think many people would have minded if they just used the same sculpt. As it is, probably a little outdated now. Then you've got the Rancor Keeper, again, 1983 release with the Return of the Jedi. And his character's been redone since in the Power of the Force line in the late 90s, and again in the Legacy collection, which is what you can see here. EV-9D9, again, one of the last 17, 1985 release. And again, Hasbro were quick to put this one out in the modern line in the late 90s. So again, 3 for 3. So you think, you think it might be hard for them to get a release in the vintage collection now, but they were one of the earliest figures to get a release in the modern line. So again, EV-9D9 in the Power of the Force 2 collection. And finally, on the right hand side, we've got Barada. Now, Barada has never been done in the modern line. So what you see there is the last 17 figure from the Kenner line, 1985. We've had Kithaba, who's a similar looking figure, but we've never had Barada. In some ways, I mean, you could possibly do a kit bash, but maybe Barada's or Kithaba's, sculpt maybe just a little behind the times. Again, if they'd released it at the time in Vintage 1.0, or when Kithaba got his, I want to say he got a re-release, it could easily have just been Barada. But anyway, yeah, so that's where we're at. But today we're going to focus on EV-9D9. How can we get this droid into the Vintage Collection 2.0? So this is my original EV-9D9. I didn't actually have it as a kid. I bought it later on in life. Thanks to buying and selling on eBay, I was able to pick this one up. So yeah, this is my vintage EV-9D9. We'll bring in the Power of the Force effort that Hasbro released back in the late 90s. So we'll put them side by side. There's not a whole lot of difference really between the two of them. I mean, and there's not really too much you need to do with this droid. It's fairly static. In the movie, I mean, his legs and arms bend, and his mouth flaps, but you know, you don't need too much from this droid. What could a release look like then for Hasbro? What would it take for Hasbro to release this droid in the modern line? Well, I think a single carded release is unlikely. We saw with 8D8. Let's just bring 8D8 in here. We've got him on a card back, but he was actually released with the Jabba the Hutt playset. So getting him on a single carded release, you know, the only way you could get him was through a £100 playset. And I feel like EV-9D9 might go the same way if we were to get him at all. So, or her, sorry, I think it's a her, isn't it? So, yeah, the possibilities for another playset, maybe. I don't know if they're all, if they're kind of done with the Return of the Jedi line. They possibly are for the time being. We're although we've got a Return to Tatooine focus, the Return of the Jedi seems to have had its 40th anniversary and moved on. But hey, we can dream, right? So my idea for re-releasing EV-9D9 or getting a vintage collection EV-9D9 out there would be through a playset. So Jabba's Dungeon, essentially, we had that in the Kenner days as well. So it'd be like a nice homage to the Kenner collection, and we've had it with Jabba the Hutt's playset. We've had it with the Skiff. We've had all sorts of vehicles and playsets that also pay homage to those original, the original Kenner days. So for me, it would be a Jabba the Hutt playset. Jabba the Hutt Dungeon playset. Around, you know, the £50 mark, just like we see, or £60 mark, I guess, like we see with the Armourer's Forge and the sort of backdrops you see, the diorama pieces from like the Tantive 4 up to the Space Walls for Mandalorian. So who would come in it? Would it be just a one pack figure? Possibly not. I think it's a great opportunity to get some other figures out. So we've got R2D2. We'll bring R2D2 in there. So this was a vintage collection 1.0 release, and it's quite hard to get hold of these days. It's not cheap. I mean, none of the 1.0 figures are that cheap anyway, unless they've had a reissue. So this is a main character. This is one that collectors would definitely buy. Whether you put him in a playset or whether he actually could command his own re-release on a single card, I think he could probably command a single release there. Bringing in, obviously, the other droid, C-3PO, I would not be a fan of this one getting re-released. It would have to be a sort of an all-new sculpt, really, ideally. But I think, again, Return to Tatooine, it's a great opportunity to update the sculpt for C-3PO and get various versions of him out. Again, EV-9D9 interacts with both of these figures. Who else is part of that scene? Well, we've got the Gamorrean Guard. So let's bring the Gamorrean Guard in here. This has always been a popular figure. I feel like he got 2 releases in the vintage collection, or at least in 1.0, I mean. Or either his first release was limited and then they brought him out again. Obviously, he got a re-release in vintage 2.0. He's an incredibly popular character. There's people that wouldn't mind seeing one of those white box 4-packs of this character because, you know, chance to army build. But all of a sudden, we're creating a scene here, aren't we? So EV-9D9, the 2 droids, Gamorrean Guard. We'll bring in an 8D8 just so we don't forget about him. So this is my Power of the Force 8D8. So the torture droid. So he'd have to come with like the torture rack. You could even bring a gonk droid in here as well. So let's bring him in. It's starting to get a bit cluttered now. So, you know, again, there's options, isn't there, for a playset? You could, there's quite a few figures in here now that they interact with. One of the figures I'd like to see get a release at some point is 21B. We'll cover 21B in another video for like the Empire Strikes Back, but there's no reason why that couldn't lead to Hasbro using the sculpt for the torture rack that the 21B is on in Return of the Jedi. So that's another character. So yeah, other than the playset option, the other thing about EV-9D9, he does appear in The Mandalorian. So you see him in Chalmun's Cantina. So again, the HasLab that will be getting released in 2025 is the HasLab Cantina. So why not get EV-9D9 out at this point and have an option to have him tending bar? We also see him in Book of Boba Fett along with 8D8. So this would be, we may have missed the boat on it, but this was probably my original pitch would have been to get EV-9D9 and 8D8 as a 2-pack. and get them on Book of Boba Fett cards, and then have them re-released on Return of the Jedi cards. Well, we've had 8D8 in Return of the Jedi. Again, mine staying carded. I'll I'll touch more on that in another video. Why mine isn't open. But yeah, so they both appear in the Book of Boba Fett, so they interact with the main characters as well. It would be a chance to get the Rat Catcher droid as well, so the LEP droid is someone that I would love to see at some point. I think we're moving away from the realms of what is likely to happen there. But these aren't just one scene wonders in Star Wars. They do interact with quite a few characters in various scenes. So yeah, that would be my pitch to Hasbro if I was able to make one. Get EV-9D9 in the Vintage Collection 2.0 as part of Return to Tatooine, as part of Finish the 96 multimedia releases. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I may be way off base, but I think there's a market for it, particularly the playset. I think the playsets have proved very popular with the community. If you get the price point right, if you get the sizing right, and we've seen with, you saw earlier in the video with, we've had the skiff, we've had the sail barge, okay, not pictured, but we've had the Han Solo in carbonite sort of backdrop. We've got Boba Fett's throne room, which is obviously now taken on by Jabba the Hutt, which was another release. So they've had big releases in the Vintage Collection over the past few years, and I don't see why they can't carry that on. In another video, we'll touch on the Max Rebo band. We'll touch on the other figures that haven't made it yet into the Vintage Collection, like the Rancor Keeper and Barada, because there's definitely opportunities for those to come out as well. But for now, that's it. In Day of the Dead, if you like what you've seen, please consider giving this a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel, because I want to make more content and I want to interact with the community. So let me know your thoughts. What would you do differently if you were if you were pulling the strings at Hasbro? How would you get these figures out to the community? Because obviously it has to be within the realms of possibility. I think this isn't just well, we can dream, we can have our wish lists and all sorts, but I'm trying to sort of stay a bit grounded with what I think is possible, and I think that what I've discussed in this video is possible. So yeah, I've been Dave the Dead signing off. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.